Hey everybody, Sujin Patel here from Mailshake. I've got Mike, head of sales at PandaDoc. You've heard Mike before many times. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Susan. Happy to be back.
Always great to talk to you, man. I always learn a couple things and level up my sales process. Today, we're going to talk about how to respond quickly to deal opportunities and really why that's important. So, Mike, as a head of sales, I'm sure you know the importance of prompt responses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the old adage of time kills all deals, it really does apply even today in the current models. So, um, absolutely, it's all about response time. But I do think it's important for us to sort of distinguish, Susan, between lead response time and sort of tactics around speeding up an opportunity or a sales cycle. So, if we maybe throttle between leads and maybe prospects that are a little bit more nurtured, I think it will probably help us stay focused a bit. So maybe we start with leads.
Yeah, let's start with leads. And so for everyone that, watching, listening, what have you, um, depending on, if it's an inbound opportunity, if somebody went through your website to book a time or, it's being handed over from SDR to AE, an opportunity lead, it's going to be different. So we'll kind of go and specify lead versus kind of deal opportunity. Before we jump into kind of the nitty gritty, this is a silly question. Like, why is speed and a quick response time even relevant? Why is that important?
Well, I think it really comes down to momentum, to be frank. And if the momentum is very, very quick from the buyer side, they have a compelling event that they're really trying to maybe solve a problem by a specific time. It's really important to align with that buyer's momentum or their buying time frame, and doing anything we possibly can to understand that and consult as professionals. But ultimately, I think that a part of the sales rep's responsibility is really monitoring that momentum, trying to build that momentum, but also aligning and sort of mirroring the momentum that the buyer has, so we don't come off as trying to shove something down someone's throat or being a little overbearing, right? We do want them to have a very good customer experience, but if there are some tactics that we can deploy to speed that process up, it's obviously better for the business. And in many cases, it's a customer-centric approach, and it's better for the buyer as well.
Absolutely. And from what I've read, 77% of sellers think speed is a speedy response is important to closing that deal. So with that in mind, what does like an effective quick response look like? And you can, again, lead or buy opportunity or whatnot. You can kind of answer it differently, however you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it depends on sort of the channel with which that engagement takes place. So if we're talking about a chat bot, very lightweight, just trying to understand what that person on the business side can do to help navigate the lead from maybe an awareness stage into maybe a little bit more specific solution based, maybe features that are interesting about some of the pains that they might be experiencing for whatever that solution is. And if you very quickly on a quick response, very personable, non-threatening, really just looking to help in a customer-centric way, you'll find that very quickly buyers will just tell you straight up, like, I need to talk to a salesperson today. I'm interested in evaluating this very quickly. And in those scenarios at PandaDoc, at least, we have mechanisms for a quick response from a live chat representative, to where you could be on the phone with the salesperson within 15 or 20 minutes, even 5 minutes if we can accommodate, we will try to do that. And it's resulted in a whole lot of one call closes, quick deal cycles. And you're really first to market with that buyer, and you can almost set the stage and the tone for how that evaluation might be from a competitive standpoint. So if a buyer comes to me first, I answer quickly, I get them their, the solution that they need fast, they feel comfortable speaking to me, they're going to use us as the standard for the rest of the vendors that they might be evaluating in a competitive landscape. So I think it's equally as important to be first to market with a lead to an extent.
Love it, love it. And I'm going to give you guys a plug here at PandaDoc. I mean, using proposal software with all the tracking, all the things in place, how better to be quick than having it all in one place and have all the tracking, right? So you can have that data or, easily share that information to be quick, right? Because I think that's like a big part of the process is like using the right tools and technology.
Absolutely. Tools and technology are an incredible, uh, edge that sellers have in this day and age with all the bells and whistles that some of these sales enablement tools, support us with. But yeah, you're absolutely right. With PandaDoc, it's much more towards the end of that cycle, speeding it up and being more efficient. I might be in a call with you, Sujin, and if the call went well and I feel like you have the authority to get this deal done, I might ask you, hey, what would it take for us to partner up today? What's keeping us from getting this done today? And you might say, I just need to see pricing. Well, let's build
Yeah.
that proposal together right now on the screen share. It's in your inbox, and that might turn, a second call or even a first call into a closing call. And if you can do that in an agile way, you're going to increase your odds of converting that way.
Love it, love it. And we'll get into tools in a bit, but I want to talk about the process, right? The process people should look into to speed up, right? Like, because there's if I booked a meeting to talk to a salesperson or whatever a week from now, automatically, no matter how quick your response, it'll still be a week time frame, right? So I think there's different parts of that sales process, right? The inquiry and your initial response, following up, the proposal stage and whatnot. So from your experience, like where do you start? Where do you start to optimize? How do you improve, all the different layers of that?
Well, I can tell you right now, like if someone's going to book a meeting with me 2 weeks out or even a week out, I really want to understand why, so I might encourage my sales reps to just ping, the individual who booked that meeting and say, hey, Sujin, really excited to have our conversation next week. I had some time free up this Friday. Any chance we could speed this process up and connect then? I'm all available on Friday afternoon. Would love to connect then. Maybe you have a specific reason for wanting it to be next week. Maybe you want to bring your CEO in and that's the only time that individual can connect. If I get a response like that, great. I'm totally cool with that. I'd rather kill two birds with one stone and have one productive conversation. But it at least opens up the door now for me to have a little bit of a conversation with you, removed from the actual scheduled call. And I might be able to speed up my own process a little bit there, maybe get a general understanding of what you're looking for in that conversation, and prepare myself to have a solid agenda going into that so we can really, really be efficient in that first call. So I think the general rule of thumb is if something's over 5 days out, why not at least try to move that up and ask just a polite, persistent question of can we do this sooner? I'm available. And if somebody's going to schedule something further than 2 weeks out, I think it's a really, really bad sign that they're not really compelled to buy. So I would also use my instincts and realize, maybe this isn't something that's really, really worth my time if they're not interested in chatting with me for quite some time.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think I'll tell you at Mailshake, we do that, right? We send that email out. It's a very templated response, right? Like you replace what the dates are and the person and what their needs, whatever. But we actually get closed. Like usually the response we get back to that email is, I actually just had one question. Do you do this integration or how does this work or blah, blah, blah. And oftentimes those one responses actually purchase that day, right? And so we've taken a week out to same day purchase, and save time on a calendar, right? And
Yep.
oftentimes I found that other time turns into an onboarding call, right? Like the original call is not like to sell, it's to now fully educate after they've used the platform.
Yeah. Or if you're even thinking about opportunity cost as a seller, it's like, wow, I just got 30 minutes back where I could maybe take another new call. And that now increases, my ability to potentially close a higher number this month. Right. And I think it's really great. We're talking about removing blockers to get an ideal situation and convert a lead to a logo or a closed one very quickly. But conversely, like you mentioned, maybe that one question we have to respond in the negative. And much better now we deal with that up front, disqualify early so that we can actually save each other's time. I respect that as a buyer when I'm engaged in funnel with somebody and they disqualify me and they come at it with a very prescriptive expert, in the space type of a response. I trust that person much more moving forward. And if I understand what that product does, maybe in the future, I'm going to go back to that individual when the time is right for me. But, now I just got 30 minutes back on my calendar. Maybe, I can use that time for something better than which we just learned in one email would have been a waste of both of our time, right?
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point. Yeah, it's not always for the positive that quick response can help as well. What about for follow-up meetings? Like, what's your what's your process there? How do you speed that up?
I do think that it depends on the type of vertical that you might be selling into, or how complex their buying process might be. So if you're getting caught up in lengthy procurement processes, or multi-threading, needing to get sell by committee and really hound people to try to get folks in to validate the solution. Oftentimes in between, the awareness phase, the early portion of the lead and closed one, there's a big gap in between that middle funnel. And it really is largely dependent on the buying process. So the tactics that we deploy there are mostly question-based to try to understand the buying process. How have you purchased software in the past before? Do you have authority to make this approval? How do we validate this the fastest and most efficient way? And oftentimes you'll learn that the buyers don't really have a great handle on that. So it's a perfect opportunity for us to prescribe what the best efficient solution is, to try to get them what they need as fast as possible. So there's a lot of ways to potentially, I use the word manufacture, but it almost sounds disingenuous, but manufacture compelling events or timelines. So, for example, there's a few things that can impact that. Maybe it's COVID, right? Something external that we have no control over. We're all moving to a remote workflow now. So I need to solve this within 7 days. It's like, oh, okay, great. Like, we're now speeding this up completely. If in fact you want this in 7 days, these are the boxes we're going to need to check in the short term here to ensure that we have a smooth transition. So I'm going to need to speak to the person who approves this within the next 48 hours. Can you bring me to that person? So it's all about understanding what their compelling event might be and then reverse engineering that timeline to try to get them what they need.
Love it. It's perfect, right? You ask them or be nimble enough to kind of work around that.
And now there's other situations where maybe they don't know or they don't want to give you all that information. Maybe they're just kicking tires or something along those lines. Use your instincts, because if they're not going to bring you to that next stage in evaluation, you're at a crossroads where it's like, am I going to backdoor this person and maybe go over their head to somebody who's got a little bit more authority here? Or am I going to ride with this champion because I believe they can get it done? I just need to work with them and align with this individual's timeline, right? So sometimes you do get met with resistance, and it's really about being agile enough to navigate those waters.
Yeah, makes sense. So I want to talk about the balance here of like moving quickly, but also like giving the prospect enough time. How does that work? I mean, it sounds like a kind of they're opposing factors.
Yeah, it's really, in my experience, it's been all about how frequently this person has actually bought software in the past, or what their experience in domain might be, or cloud, right? Like, you kind of need to understand that a little bit. If I'm talking to somebody from maybe a legacy type of a company that's maybe a little bit less software friendly, right? Like, I'm gonna slow myself down in that situation and make sure that I understand how to make sure that this person feels confident making this recommendation. Oftentimes, that's what happens in these situations where things start to slow down and people don't like an aggressive approach. They typically just don't feel comfortable making the decision. And you need to really drill down and understand why, and how you can enable that success and partner up with that individual to get them to see the light. There are also situations where, sadly, it's not the right fit. And you need to be prepared to pull the parachute out as well, because we're talking about time here. Speed to deal and speed to momentum is extremely important in maintaining that, but it's also about protecting your own calendar and making sure that you're not spinning your wheels in places that you shouldn't be.
Love it. Love it. I think what you mentioned there could also be identified just so early on in the conversation, that just you're using the information they tell you to kind of bucket them into various ICPs or whatever categories. and or disqualify or qualify in them to then react and make a plan around that, right? So someone moving from on-prem requires, the like 10 people sign offs versus, the champion that's like, hey, I'm going to go try this. I need 3 seats. Then we're going to go bring in this person. Let's schedule that now. You give them the opportunity to go tell you that, and they pretty much will.
Right. It's like the path of least resistance, right? Like let's make it easy for both sides to get what they want here. Another important thing that we've kind of missed here is budgets as well, right? Like if you're moving into the upmarket or mid-market space and you start dealing with somebody who's at the director level, perhaps they have the ability to approve something, under $10,000, right? If not, it's going to go through this lengthy legal process. So it's really about what's the value of the path of least resistance on this 10K deal that maybe I can get this in quicker, maybe get them to value faster, both sides win, and we don't need to spend 4 weeks or maybe even 2 months going through some lengthy, procurement process. So there's that aspect as well.
Love it. Yeah, that's definitely a big factor. What about urgency? Like, how do you create urgency? I hate saying manufacture. How do you identify or create urgency, right? Especially now.
Yeah. So I like to break down like almost every sales cycle into 3 phases, which is why buy me? So excuse me, why buy anything? Why buy me? And why buy now? So you're asking about the why buy now time. And like there's really only a few things that can create that. It's either external, like we were talking about COVID, or maybe it's something internal where my boss tells me, hey, if you don't solve this by X date, you're out of here, right? Like I'm going to be really compelled to do that. There's a lot of questions that you can deploy, Sujin, to try to like understand what the urgency might be. And we call it like twisting the knife, right? Like if you identify a pain, it's like drill down on that pain, understand it, and ask the question the same way almost 3 times to make that buyer really feel the impact of what they're trying to solve, right? And then it might be, okay, so what happens if we don't solve this, right? We don't really understand the timing factor yet, but what happens if we don't solve this? I might lose my job. I might not hit my goals for this quarter. The business might suffer, whatever these things might be. And then trying to apply that time frame to it. So it's like, okay, so if we were to solve this by this date, we would avoid that pain or avoid that issue, correct? Right. And then from there, once you have that roundabout timeline, trying to again just reverse engineer it, based on a task and a mutual action plan to actually achieve our goal within that time frame.
Love it. So smart. And you're just getting the answers from their mouths by asking the question in a right way, or kind of proposing it in a way that they're going to agree with you or think about, like, oh, if I don't buy this software by the end of the month, there's no way in heck I'm going to meet my quarter goal that ends, next month, because I don't have enough time to utilize it, right? Or stuff like that.
And then
all right.
We also deploy like our time-based incentives. And this is something that most sales orgs have at least tried. But once we have a champion we feel comfortable with, I told you, obviously that situation where we ask for the business, it could be a one-call close. You could flip a deal like right there. If a champion says that they will recommend PandaDoc to the business, and we ask that question straightforward, do you feel like you're prepared to make the recommendation that your company purchase PandaDoc? If they answer that in the affirmative, we're immediately trying to apply an incentive to pricing based off of time, right? So great. So if you're ready to make that recommendation, we might be able to offer you some incentive-based pricing if we can align on a time frame here. Is that something that you're interested in hearing something more about? Of course. You're going to let me pay less, possibly? Of course, I'm interested in hearing about that. Great. So here's the incentive that we can give you. The only ask is that we get this closed out by X date. Is that something that you think that you can work with? Yes. If not, no, great. You work around it a little bit, but money also incentivize compelling events as well.
Absolutely. But yeah, I love how you're attaching the money to dates, right? To move things closer and being very upfront about that too, right? Like you've kind of made your intentions. Yes, we will give you a discount, but only to move the deal forward faster, right?
Yeah, we invest in partnerships and transparency and honesty. So if you're willing to do that, and we can predict within some serious, small percentages when a deal is going to come in, right? Like as sales leaders, we love that. It's all about predictable, scalable, and repeatable processes. So if you can tell me definitively, I'm going to have this deal within 7 days, I love hearing that.
Awesome. All right. Last question here. And this is it's a fun one because I think this is very tactical. I think a lot of people can take advantage of this and improve stuff they do. What type of tools and processes should people put in place? Like what do you guys use to move things, quicker?
Yeah, it's like it's where are those friction points in the cycle and how do you minimize that, right? Remove the blockers. So if we're talking about a demo request or interacting on the web, we use Drift. It's just a really comprehensive chat bot. It's increased our conversion rates in a major way. Speed to lead is much faster. Our ability to close one call close is incredible. So a live chat tool is a great way to catch compelled buyers with a whole lot of momentum. There's also some friction points between a BDR and SDR that might be sourcing an opportunity for a closer. How do we schedule this time fast? I'm looking at somebody's calendar. Oh, that time doesn't work. This time doesn't work. So we use Chili Piper, which is it's a round robin mechanism and a calendaring tool that allows you to not only book in a very efficient way, but also reschedule very quickly, and it's in a very interactive way. And then lastly, there's always some blockers between propose and close, and that's where we use our own tool. We drink our own champagne and use PandaDoc for the bottom of the funnel efficiency gains as it comes to process improvement.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, those are Chili Piper is great. We use, I'd say my quick ones are Drift or Intercom, both kind of different companies use different needs. But yeah, both are great. I think we've seen like 1/3 of our new booking or new meeting requests and kind of demos come from Drift, and every single one of those places you can optimize depending on the place they're at, right? So even in our help docs, we've got Drift, but that is then geared towards potentially existing customers or upsell opportunities because they might be looking at like a new page, a new feature functionality they don't have access to. So awesome different ways you can kind of like the marketing department, I guess, can help you optimize that whole flow depending on who you have and at your size of your company. You might need something like Calendly, super simple, no frills kind of thing of like, hey, you get the meeting, you have all the calendars combined, you can get the most quick meeting, or if you're dealing with that whole transition between BDR to closer, you might need something more comprehensive. So I think what you've given me a lot to think about, and hopefully the viewers, listeners here, is that like, look at your whole process and go find the friction points. And, you've given a couple good tools too, and lots of good ways people can improve that process. So thank you.
Absolutely, Sujan. It's been a pleasure. And thanks again for having me. I look forward to the next one.
Yeah. Awesome. I look forward to it. It looks like at this rate, we do a video every 6 to 9 months. So I can't wait. And I'm going to go send this, just because I have a sneak peek, I'm going to send this video unedited to my sales team and make sure we look at our processes. And I'm pretty sure we're going to walk away with 1 or 2 things that we can do to kind of shave off 10-20% of our time frame. So thank you.
Glad to hear it.
Awesome. So those of you guys don't know Mike, go check out PandaDoc. If you do use proposals or any of that stuff, I'm just going to give you a shameless plug because it is pretty freaking awesome. Just the power of using a software for proposals instead of sending I call it the ghetto way, an attached PDF with no tracking. So go check that out and see if that can work for you guys.